There is a lot some of us don't get about indigenous peoples, but they're not called the guardians of the forest for nothing.
The traditional knowledge, and we can learn a lot from them.
Coming up, another International Day to honor the indigenous among us has come and gone. But how close are we really to respecting who they are and protecting what they protect?
There isn't any recognition for the indigenous people's rights.
And far from the rainforests, deep in Florida's Everglades, another battle is playing out. So this facility went up fast, discreetly, with no public input, no environmental review. A massive detention center pushed through in the shadows on sacred lands is threatening rare wildlife.
Many folks find it hypocritical that a government that has spoken about law and order
You're going to see a big change in Washington crime stats very soon.
would be moving forward to build this federal immigration detention center without complying with environmental law.
This fight pits tribes against the Trump administration, and the stakes could not be higher.
Pero las manos y los pies.
Bringing this facility here is disrupting everything.
Just 2 degrees is on. Now,
We are for the earth.
There are a million reasons why this detention center is a bad idea.
this was a march in Brazil organized by Amiga, a coalition of indigenous women in Brazil, bringing together voices from across the world to claim space and call for justice. For a full week in early August, more than 5,000 women marched from Brasilia's Esplanada dos Ministérios all the way to Congress with the message Veta Lula, demanding that President Lula da Silva veto what activists call the PL de Devastação, a bill that would loosen environmental protections. But this was more than a political act. It was deeply spiritual and ancestral.
E nós estamos lutando por essa segurança também de garantia de direito dentro do território para as mulheres, em todos os territórios brasileiros, né?
And streets across the world were filled with music, color, dance for International Day of the World's Indigenous People. Oh, it's beautiful watching this annual ritual, isn't it? But it is easy to forget what's really at stake. Because behind every drumbeat and each step are the people who protect the forests, which give us oxygen and water. So here's the question. If indigenous people are fighting to keep all of this alive, then what are we doing?
Every year on August 9th, hundreds of millions of people speaking an estimated 7,000 languages and representing 5,000 cultures celebrate International Day of the World's Indigenous Peoples. This is in Mexico. It might look just like a colorful street parade, but it's so much more. It's a reminder of the role these people have in protecting languages, cultural heritage, and some of the most important ecosystems left on Earth. It's about rights, survival, and resilience.
Es una parte de la que, para que todos puedan conocer y tanto los que ya sabemos, pero que vamos más por el show y ellos que el espectáculo, ¿no? Y ellos que son los originarios nos muestran lo verdadero, o sea, las raíces verdaderas.
No nos olvidemos de nuestra identidad, de donde venimos.
From the rainforests of Brazil to the highlands of Bolivia and the wide open savannas of Kenya, indigenous peoples safeguard much of the land that keeps the earth breathing. Globally, they manage or have tenure rights over at least a quarter of the planet's land. Land that, according to the UN, holds 80% of the Earth's remaining biodiversity.
They are the guardians of this forest, especially in the Congo Basin. The traditional knowledge and the way they relate to these forests is very important, and we can learn a lot from them.
In the Amazon, indigenous-led territories maintain deforestation. The scale is 3 times lower than surrounding areas, even as illegal logging and miners push deeper into their forests.
La flecha arco nuestra defensa, porque antiguo nuestro abuelo así enfrentaba.
In Kenya, the nomadic Maasai are protecting wildlife corridors vital for elephants and lions. while rethinking grazing practices to prevent overuse of the land and water.
Ng'ombe zilikufa, kondoo zilikufa, ikawa kila mtu ana chochote, hauna chochote. Ng'ombe zimeisha, uko na ardhi lakini ng'ombe hakuna kitu itakula. Mi nikaamua niseme nitenge mahali fulani niweke ufugaji wa samaki.
But the threats are constant. In El Salvador, indigenous leaders fought for decades just to be recognized, finally winning constitutional acknowledgement of their rights in 2014. And in Papua New Guinea, traditional reef guardians are battling coral bleaching and industrial fishing that threaten their coastal waters. But despite these challenges, indigenous knowledge remains one of the most powerful climate tools we have. UN research shows that when indigenous communities are granted legal rights to their lands, carbon storage rises, biodiversity bounces back, and water quality improves. Protecting cultures is just as urgent as protecting nature. Every 2 weeks, the world loses another indigenous language, and with it, unique knowledge of nature, medicine, and history.
I grew up largely without the language. My mother's generation grew up without the language. My mother's first language was Olelo Hawaii, but at a very young age, her own parents forbade her to speak the language and told her that she could only speak what they referred to as the king's language. So we had 2 solid generations of us being told that our language is no good, that we are second-class citizens.
On August 9th and every day, indigenous peoples fight to protect the lands, waters, and heritage that sustain all of us. If their languages fall silent and their forests fall, we all lose. Their survival is also ours.
Dorthea, just before this conversation began, we aired a segment about how the indigenous language gives a much clearer understanding of the connection between those communities and the environment. Is there a correlation to you between a fading language and, say, lesser protection for the environment?
Maybe it's more like it's like the naming system, like how we pass down the history, how we like guarding this specific area because we name them, and the name has specific meanings. Where when you pass the names, then you know what happened at that time, like what our ancestor did, something like that.
You've taken up the role of a youth leader and researcher advocating for West Papuan communities. How did your childhood shape that path, especially witnessing deforestation and displacement?
When I was a kid, we have our own like traditional artists, and our parents, especially, they teach us about our culture and stories in our culture every day. But then we have our own artists that show it to us through songs or paintings or anything. But then at some point, they become a threat to the government. And some of them are actually got killed because of that. Because through their songs and stories, people unite and learn that we actually have our own beautiful natural resources that we have to guard and keep. And when we heard about it, we fell in love with our nature, and then we become realized that our in our situation, we are currently being exploited. So they become a threat to the government, and some of them have to flee from the country, but also got killed.
What's one thing you truly want the world to understand about the indigenous environmental struggle?
In Papua specifically, we are known as one of the third lung of the world, other than Amazon Brazil and Delta Congo. So we think it's very important to protect the forest, but also environment, because we not only to support our own community, but also to the world.
Right now, you're trying to protect your land in the face of mega projects, legal battles, silencing the government and recognizing the world indigenous. If your fight does succeed, what does victory look like to you and the children that you would like to have?
The thing is, victory means that we can decide what will happen on our land. The FPIC process is very important, free, prior, and informed consent. We can decide what we want to do with our own land instead of being the victims of these land grabbing cases.
Let's talk about Alligator Alcatraz, a brand new high-security U.S. immigration detention center that was built at lightning speed west of Miami that can hold thousands and thousands of people. From above, it looks a bit isolated, right? But that's the point, we think. Officials say escape is nearly impossible thanks to its remote location and the alligator-filled wetlands surrounding it. But it's not just the name that's raising eyebrows. The site sits inside Florida's Big Cypress National Preserve, which is home to endangered wildlife like the Florida panther and the Everglade snail kite. Environmental groups say the government ignored the rules to build the facility. No environmental review, no public comment, all in violation of state and federal laws, including the Endangered Species Act. So two major conservation groups are taking the government to court over alligator Alcatraz, asking a judge to dismantle the facility.
Advocating for the Everglades and the environment is advocating for all of us. Because we are for the earth. We are of the earth.
They're warning the project could harm wildlife, water quality, and decades of Everglades restoration work. One of the groups supporting the lawsuit is the Mikosuke tribe, an indigenous community who've lived and cared for the land alligator Alcatraz is built on.
Everything about us is in the Everglades, from the wildlife, food source, medicinal uses, everything. All our lives depend on this Everglades.
This is just their way of opening the door to develop out here, because they always are looking for ways to develop in our natural spaces. This is just one of their reasons to get into the Everglades. And somebody's going to have another brainchild of an idea. Oh, well, let's do this, let's do that. Because right now they're building a mini city out here.
Bringing this facility here is disrupting everything from A to Z. The ants all the way to us.
Leading the charge in this case is Friends of the Everglades and the Center for Biological Diversity. We call the groups up for comment. So this facility went up fast, discreetly, with no public input, no environmental review. What does it say about how those behind it see the law and the public?
Sadly, I think it's no surprise that a government with so little respect for human dignity would also have so little regard for the environment, even the world famous Everglades. And, I think many folks find it hypocritical that a government that has spoken about law and order would be moving forward to build this federal immigration detention center without complying with environmental law.
So your team is raising serious legal flags: the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, the National Park Organic Act. Which violation is most urgent and why?
Well, right now, what we've moved forward on is a law called the National Environmental Policy Act. And it's a law that requires government decision makers to essentially look before they leap, to understand the consequences of their decisions before they commit to taking action. And that is so important here because the Department of Homeland Security has decided to drop this cruel detention center in the middle of a national preserve, in the middle of the Everglades, in a place that's home to endangered Florida panthers, Florida bonneted bats, and a whole host of other endangered and threatened species. So the stakes are really high. And so that is in part why we have moved forward so quickly, is to get this injunction and to, really stop all activities on the site before irreparable harm occurs.
Politically, this is a fiercely contested site. How do you keep the environmental argument center stage amid the immigration debates, the national security rhetoric?
Well, there are a million reasons why this detention center is a bad idea. But I think that the federal and state governments made a crucial mistake when they picked their location, because millions of Floridians and millions more Americans fiercely love the Everglades. And that has brought many allies to the fight, maybe some who wouldn't normally stand out or step up and speak out. And I think that's in part because of just how much is at stake here. The Everglades are a World Heritage Site and a Ramsar wetland of international importance. Big Cypress is a certified international dark sky space. And there are many people who have taken lifetime trips to the Everglades to see hundreds of stars, or to go to the only place where they can see endangered Florida bonneted bats soar across the sky. They understand that these are irreplaceable treasures, and that It really, I think, makes them question the government's decisions when they would make such a boneheaded decision, not just when it comes to cruelty to people, but also to the harm to such an incredibly important place.
It is time for Just to Matter, where we talk about the small things that, well, change everything. This time, we're talking about something that you may not really pay much attention to, well, until it's gone. It's a language, an entire way of surviving on this planet. Right now, almost half the world's languages are predicted to vanish by the end of the century. Every couple of weeks, another indigenous language goes silent. Because languages are blueprints to experiences. They can carry crucial local knowledge of how to live with the land, water, and react to the seasons. For example, in the Amazon, the Nhingatu word pirachema means the time when fish swim upstream to spawn. If you know that word, you know when to fish and when to leave the waters alone to keep the cycle going. On Pacific Islands, the Kiribati words tekore nimao describes a dangerous ocean swell that comes right before a storm. No weather app needed, you hear it, you know how to prepare and to bring boats out of the water. And in the Arctic, Inuit languages have words like kinu, which refer to slushy ice that's about to break apart, and nilak, solid freshwater ice you can use for drinking. Those differences can mean the difference between safe passage and disaster and drinking safe potable water. It's all about survival. When we erase such languages, we erase the language of people who can read the land better than any satellite. And here's the proof. UN research shows that indigenous communities with strong language and culture protect more biodiversity, store more carbon, and adapt faster to climate extremes. So the next time you hear a language you don't understand, don't just think foreign. Think potentially endangered, because that language might contain a key to surviving the climate crisis. Around the world, people risk everything to protect nature. But for indigenous people, that can come with threats, violence, and in some cases, death. Here are a few of their stories. On another front, despite being mocked and bullied, the Semai tribe in Malaysia are challenging gender norms as they work to conserve wildlife. You just heard gibbons, the only primates on the planet apart from us that can sing. Malaysia's home to 5 species, but there are as many as 20 across South and East Asia. However, this special animal faces threats as forests are cut down, or they're being hunted for their meat and sold in the illegal pet trade. Here from Malaysia's first all-female, all-indigenous ranger unit, which is working to prevent this from happening.
Pertama saya masuk area gibbon, saya rasa macam seronok, gembira sebab jumpa dengan mata sendiri. Dengan suara dia yang begitu lantang. Kalau macam semasa dia menyanyi tu, suara dia mengalahkan bunyi sungai.
We are working with traumatized gibbons here, you know. They will not easily trust human. But when they told me they are able to transfer like Pablo to another cage without any like aggression from Pablo. So I think the way they handle the gibbons is with love and passion.
Fahamlah macam mana cara nak pasang trish cap ke, nak buat protein ball, arrangement nak bagi cara dia macam mana, cara buat pun macam mana. Mula-mula masuk hari tu sangat kekok bagi saya. Nak buat ni tak boleh. Saya masuk sana pun rasa macam cemas. Macam mana cara nak buat ni?
People bully them, you know. Like if they said, oh you work with the gibbon project, no wonder your face is like monkey. And then when they ask them how much they get paid, and then they will say, oh, why you paid them so like that much? They don't know how to use money. So all of that, people should be ashamed now of themselves before they give comments. Like this is like really stupid comments.
Harap anak-anak saya ataupun perempuan-perempuan yang lain yang berada di kampung sana tu janganlah berasa malu terhadap diri sendiri. Jangan berasa lemah. Kita kena kuatkan semangat ataupun tenaga kita bagi harapan supaya macam semangat perempuan tu tak pupus.
And that's our show. On this episode, you heard from indigenous communities all the way from Asia to the Americas. And their stories are bound by hard truths. Centuries of domination, centuries of exploitation and indifference. Yet, in the face of all of it, they endure, not as relics of the past, but as protectors of the future, safeguarding the forests, rivers and skies that keep our planet alive. Still too often, their wisdom is ignored. Their rights are dismissed and their presence is reduced to campaign slogans. So as we leave you, pay attention to these images. The forests, the wildlife, the living abundance they protect. This is what they're fighting for, so that future generations might inherit a planet, not just a planet, but a living, breathing home.